2005 restoration of the film. I assume most of you may have seen this film over the years. So this is a film came out 1965. In addition to some TV work he'd done, this is the film that Peckinpah did between Ride the High Country and The Wild Bunch. And incredible cast in the film. As typical of Peckinpah, you've got a really, really deep cast in this. Obviously, Charlton Heston, Richard Harris, Jim Hutton, James Coburn. Got a couple of big European stars, Senta Berger, Mario Adorf in here, and then typical Sam Peckinpah cast members here: Warren Oates, Ben Johnson, R.G. Armstrong, L.Q. Jones, Slim Pickens, Brock Peters, John Davis Chandler. Absolutely great, typical Western cast here, going very, very deep. We've also got this. Let's see what it. Originally, this film was apparently done by Peckinpah. Came out to be about a 4-hour cut, his very first cut. And then it's believed that his original director's cut was somewhere around 156 minutes. When the film had its premiere, it was a length of 136 minutes. Didn't do very well in its premiere. This was a kind of troubled production for Peckinpah. So after the initial premiere of that 136-minute cut, the studio, against Peckinpah's wishes and against the producer's wishes, the studio cut the film another 13 minutes down to 123 minutes, which is the version that came out, and was around for many, many years. And that version also had a score that was not something that Peckinpah was very pleased with, or the producer was pleased with. This is a score done by Danielle, I'm not really good with Russian names, Danielle M. Titrov? Did I get it right? Danielle M. Titrov? Close enough. And also had a title song by Mitch Miller. Wow. And this is the version that was available for many, many years. A cut version, missing some key scenes, with a score that was not really well fit to the film. So then years later, now 2005, they did restore the film, bring it back to its, they couldn't bring it back to the original director's cut. That footage is believed to be lost, much of that footage, but they were able to bring it back to the original premiere cut, or close to that premiere cut of 136 minutes. And it was decided to rescore the film, sort of give the film sort of closer to what they thought Peckinpah would have wanted for this. So this was rescored for the 2005 reissue, which is the version we're showing here. And this was done by the composer Christopher Caliendo, who's here with us tonight to give a little introduction. I'd like to invite Christopher down here right now to do a quick intro with us.
Are you Steve?
Christopher?
Yes. He was worried that you weren't here. Yes.
Thank you. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about things you did before coming in this. You've got a long career working in composing, working in music, and not all in film. You did a lot of TV work in your early days. I read you composed a score for the Vatican. You've done a lot of work in jazz and releasing classical things and tango and things of that sort. So you've done a lot of things in various areas of music. And before this, you had done some rescores for some silent films.
Correct.
So maybe talk a little bit about your background and how you got to this point of scoring films and working on stuff before we get to the rescore for this film.
How much time do we have?
We could do a good 10, 15 minutes or so.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for leaving the privacy of your homes tonight to see this restored version. It's a lot more enjoyable for me to talk about it today than it was 14 years ago when it was first released to incredible amounts of controversy. My life started in film with Henry Mancini. I won his film scholarship award, which at the time I was in Boston studying at the New England Conservatory and then Lowell College of Music. And I came out here and was introduced to CBS to start scoring Dallas, Knots Landing, and Paradise. Those are my early days. And it was Paradise, an episode called Ghost Dance, where I received an Emmy nomination for that particular show. And in '91, those 3 shows for CBS, David Rose's shows, left, and I was faced with being a freelancer for the first time. My parents are Italian, so I went to Italy and ended up meeting Giorgio Gallo serendipitously on a plane. And I went to the Stazione Centrale in Rome and met him, and he took me to the Vatican, where I was commissioned by John Paul II as the first composer in American history to be commissioned by him, and then the first time a American composer, was commissioned twice by the same Pope, which is quite an extraordinary experience. But it was Henry who taught me the business of music. He taught me to use everything you can to diversify yourself as a musician, to conduct, to perform, to use the stage as a way to promote all of your musical personalities. I started my own publishing company and got very involved in the business of music. And I really feel that when you're hired today as a composer for film, someone like Jerry Goldsmith comes to mind, who really represents to me a true film composer. It's almost hard to establish an adjective for him. I mean, it's very easy to say, your music sounds like John Williams, your music sounds like Alfred Newman. When it comes to Jerry or Bernard Herrmann, he's the true chameleon, the true master. And I loved his customized scores, his chamber scores. He was a real hero for me. To just carry us through all these experiences you can draw from. And I think that's a credit to the director or producer. As a guitarist, I'm a concert guitarist, and my world music catalog takes tango, flamenco, gypsy into its own world music amalgam. And being an ethnic composer, that's really what got me this job for Major DUNDEE. Grover Crisp, head of film restoration, God bless him, took a chance on me. And it's almost very hard to move from television to film. There seems to be this dichotomy or this codification. If you write for TV, you don't write for film. And I always felt my music should be for the larger epic films. And growing up with idolizing Charlton Heston, you can imagine as a young man just, and I have to tell that story because it's a really good story for other composers in the audience. It was December 5th. And it's 4 in the afternoon. I get a call from Grover, who heard me perform my guitar with my tango group, was a hobby guitarist, and for some inexplicable reason, thought that I would be the right composer for this film. Because, as you notice in the film, about reel 5 or 6, you'll see a lot of ethnic music that needed to be composed that was Mexican in style. And so I get the call, I go to screening room 2, and I'm sitting watching the film you're not about to see, the unrestored, grainy version with the score, the original score. I'd never seen Major DUNDEE before. And I think they made it in 2 suits, from the legal department in the audience, in the screening room as well. There are always those guys. And I was asked that inevitable question after the film ended, which was an incogent experience. I did not understand the film. I didn't quite get it. I didn't understand the score. God bless Daniel Amphitryoff. If you take a really long, deep review of his film history, Russian immigrant, 214 movies in Hollywood, Academy Award nominee for Lassie. This is a significant man. But I didn't get it, so Grover looked at me and said, "What do you think?" And I literally paused. I didn't know what to say, because you have to be diplomatic. You want the job. You never say no in Hollywood. You say yes, and then you figure it out. But I had to come up with a number right there and then. How much is it going to cost? How many minutes of music? So I threw out 85 minutes of music. It's going to cost you this amount of money. Probably 2 sessions at Capitol Records. If you give me 35 of Hollywood's best, I can turn this around. And now, 14 years later, I can honestly say I really wasn't off. It's 85 minutes of music. I personally feel that silence is music. It didn't need more. I would have loved to have a little bit more forces. But we rescored it. I was asked to compose the score in 25 days, 85 minutes of music, plus orchestrate it, and plus produce the separate parts for everyone. And these are the intimations that people don't hear about composers. It's true to this day. For some reason, we get about 3 weeks, and that's about it. And you got to turn it around. And I'll never forget the first time the film was shown to the press in screening room 2. We had people fly all over the world for this event. And I'm fine with criticism, but there's no one that's going to like. Not everyone's going to like the score and what we did. But there was one lady in that screening room that I'll never forget. She was a very elegant, sophisticated-looking young woman, and she flew from South America, and she was the daughter of Sam Peckinpah. And I said, "That's the one that counts for me." And after the screening, she came up, she put her hand on my heart and said, "My father loved you." And I just...
Did you find that made it harder for you or easier to actually see the film with the other score rather than coming? Because normally you're composing something, you might have some notes and ideas from the director and what they want, but you're not seeing something with an existing score and then having to focus on different. Was that harder, or how did that affect you, having seen it and now you've got this other score in your head you've got to kind of wipe out and sort of...
It's a great question. I understand why you ask it. My answer is no. There's no time for conjecture. Grover was kind enough to get some authorities on Peckinpah. God bless my dear friend, may rest in peace, Nick Redmond, Paul Sager. These are men who are published books, who have lived the Peckinpah life and truly erudite. And even that didn't help me, because ultimately the composer has to go into that small room, go inside, and has the time to only intuitively bank on their own vocabulary. I was told Peckinpah didn't like war scenes scored. I decided to throw in music halfway into the ambush scene. I felt it was necessary, so I was given a little bit of, umshka for that. But now it's accepted. Now people are saying it's relevant, the approach. Leonard Maltin, the great film critic, whom I respect as a gentleman and a very erudite man, said to me, "How in the world did you capture a 1965 film sounding like Jerry Goldsmith?" And I thought, what an interesting statement, because it's an 1865 film. So to answer your question, intuition, time, gut, and then we talk about it theoretically, right? So the immediate answer is no. It's just you simply have to rise to the occasion and just hope that this enormous break you have and millions of hours of dedication and effort and composition and schooling will pay off.
And you had done scores for a couple of silent films before this. You had some experience scoring older existing films, but I would imagine coming into this, you're rescoring a Peckinpah film. It's got to be intimidating in some way also. Like you mentioned being an Art Herman fan, and all of his work with Hitchcock for years until they kind of split their association. It's almost like being called in to rescore one of the later Hitchcock films. I would find that, I personally find it very intimidating. You're now working on a master work, or a film by a master director who's not here anymore to sort of give you direct feedback.
Correct.
Was that intimidating for you to come into a film by a filmmaker of this stature?
Yeah, you would think it would be. I only knew one other Peckinpah film at the time, Straw Dogs, which I revered. That's just a miracle of filmmaking for me. So I've only recently become an invader to Peckinpah and his oeuvre, and so respect the characters of Peckinpah's films. Fascinate me, because if you take Jason Robards and The Ballad of Cable Hogan and Steve McQueen and
Getaway.
not just Getaway, but thank you. These characters are running out of time and space. Like how I came to recognize the importance and value of the Wild Bunch. They're running out of time and space, but they have this huge affirmation for life. And I think one of the things we ignore about Peckinpah's films, we can't help because of their reverence, because of their intensity, their vitality, is that they are expressed in aesthetic nature, whether utopian or violent, transcend our experience to the stage of the poetic. How do you find morality with these men who kill, rape, rob banks? You have to go beyond to the archetypes of what they represent. And I think once you can go there intellectually, you can really enjoy Peckinpah. That there is a morality among a code of thieves. And I think Peckinpah was very drawn to this kind of character, which I became later much more fascinated with and much more appreciative. But Dundee was the second film of Peckinpah, and again, 25 days, you've got to just close your eyes and
Not much time to really think about it.
there's not much time to think about it. And maybe that services the art.
And now you did mention there was some controversy now with the score after this
Yes,
film
sir.
came out. Did you want to talk about that at all, or how that affected you? Because there is, with anything like this, if you're going to be rescoring something that has an existing score, it's anything, or when a band reissues a classic album with a totally new mix, there's always going to be people who have a certain reaction to it because it's not what they're used to. And how did that reaction affect you, or what was that like for you to sort of have this come out and then have to deal with both positive and negative sort of feedback to?
I tried to establish the robot answer. Good controversy any controversy at all is good for your career. I did not see another commission until 2007. Some of the headlines were Sony banks on an unknown. That was Film Score Monthly magazine. It was the same magazine that heralded me as the top 10 composers of the year for scoring The Iron Horse for 20th Century Fox. The others were, what is Caliendo going to do next? Score Gone with the Wind with the Calypso beat, because again, no composer ever had commissioned an existing score, and we have copyright, we have intellectual property issues, the original people who recorded the soundtrack, what do you say to them? Now we have a new copyright, a new license, a new way to make money on the film. The smartest thing that Sony did was to, this is Grover's intelligence, was to issue both versions in the same DVD. That was diplomatic and ethical. I applauded him for that. But no, I mean, criticism. Again, if you're gonna go out into the world and be a musician and a creative spirit, recreate reality according to your own metaphysical values, you have to face criticism. I think Leonard Bernstein's a great point. If someone came up to Leonard Bernstein, as he said, first person, and didn't like his music, he'd say thank you and walk away, just diminish the fire. That's all you can say. Not everyone's good. I mean, if you look at the reviews on Amazon.com, the plaudits are really up here, and then there are those people that grew up with Dundee in 1965, and you're taking away my baby and repackaging it. But today, technology, so decentralizing, it's kind of a good socialism, as it's all about remixing. It's all about, I make videos with my 4-year-old son here in the audience, and I'm taking stuff from all kinds of stuff and remixing and repackaging it. So today, probably people wouldn't mind as much.
Do you want to take a few questions before we go into it also? Take a few audience questions?
Sure.
Do we have any questions in the third row?
Were you tempted to retain any of the original themes? Were there any that worked for you that you decided to keep?
La Cupacita, yeah, there was one Hispanic famous song that I retained, that we kept in during this 5th or 6th reel. But no, I really did not borrow anything from Daniel and 50 Trouble. That answers your question. Good question, though. I've never been answered that question. Ask that. Yes?
If you were to have this store today, like right now, would you do anything differently?
Please understand that my answer is no, and it doesn't come from a pretentious statement at all. Aldous Huxley in 1931, Brave New World, right? 1953, he writes A Brave New World Revisited, and people said, well, would you change it? He said no, and I kind of agree with that. It's what I thought of at the time, and it's sacrosanct because of that.
Cool, man.
Thank you.
Personally, I'm not a big fan of filmmakers who continually update and change their films.
It's suggestive, right?
Do you have any questions out there? So one more hand, right there.
Yes.
Who's your favorite composer?
Eric Ross, my favorite director. Beethoven. I can take all day to explain why, but to me, at the time of the social and aesthetical movements, he shocked us all by not, like Mozart, for example, is a different kind of genius, but even within the strictures of the day, the sonata allegro form, the structures of his period, he abided by. Beethoven said, I'm going to put an oboe solo in the 53rd measure, the first movement of Symphony No. 5. I'm going to put a choral arrangement. When you think of the symphony, Beethoven, when you think of the piano sonata, Beethoven, when you think of the string quartet, Beethoven, he was the one that paved the way. But Brahms, in his 21 years after Beethoven, finally writes his first symphony. The effect he's had on all of us is just monumental. The greatest composing brain of all time, in my opinion.
I was just going to ask whether you were ever influenced maybe by Morricone, for example, in scoring this movie?
Can I tell you a short story?
Yes, please.
Vatican would not pay for my mom and dad to come to Italy, and I had to find a way. This was the era of 1992 of cassettes. So I sent out a cassette to 8 banks. One was First Los Angeles Bank, the only bank that called me. Maria Stracciatello, the secretary for Maru Ciccone, the president, says, Maestro Caliendo, please come to Beverly Hills. Mr. Ciccone would like to meet you. So I put on my best Italian clothes, go to Beverly Hills, and walk up the stairs. It was like a scene out of The Godfather. We had 2 Sicilian men, extraordinarily handsome, black hair, looking down at me because I was 7 minutes late. And they walked me into the restaurant, which was particularly partitioned for him, the banker. And I walk in, and Maria stands up. Maru stays seated, and Maria says to me, Maestro Caliendo, le presente il presidente, the president of the bank, Maru Ciccone. And Maru doesn't even say hello. He says, do you like the music of Nino Rota? And I said, la musica di Nino Rota, in maniera di vedere da Dio, it's a way to seek the heart. And he goes, I like the music of Nino Rota, he makes me dream. Then, where I'm having, my mother always said, if you go to a restaurant, someone takes you out, order the cheapest thing in the menu. Be humble. So I ordered fettuccine bolognese. So I'm eating fettuccine bolognese, and he says to me, do you like the music of Ennio Morricone? And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Yes, but not as much as Nero. He says, the music of Ennio Morricone, that doesn't make me dream. But the music of Christopher Caliendo makes me dream. And he pulls out from his lapel an envelope with, in Italy, 2 biglietti, andare e ritornare, to go and come back business class for my mother and father. That's how it happened. And I love Ennio Morricone. And Quentin Tarantino loves Ennio Morricone, as we saw in The Hateful Eight. No, it's really wonderful to come from the heritage of Mancini, Morricone, and then trying to keep up the Italian-American mantle of music making. So it's a great privilege.
And maybe speaking of heritage too, you mentioned one of the reasons you were picked for the score and all with some of the Mexican music and stuff was your background in sort of tango, gypsy music. You've done a lot of that. So how does an Italian-American composer from Queens, New York, get that interested in tango music, gypsy, and doing all of that?
Well, we have our tarantella, we have our Italian minstrel music I grew up with. My father was a big lover of jazz and opera and Italian ethnic music. And I don't know, I was a prodigy guitar player playing professionally by the time I was 9, and I just loved different cultures and ethnic music. To this day, my publishing company is called Caliendo World Music Publishing, and we found a niche for classical musicians who could perform my music that sounds like inspired improvisation, because they're playing bossa nova, they're playing tango, African, all kinds of different world music. It just became part of my perennial themes since childhood. I always tell young people, there are themes in childhood that resonate over all of your years to adulthood, and if you're conscious enough at a young age and combine them, you're better off, because they will affect how you market the music you choose. Instead of coming out of the academic world, which is so bad in his Reformation, and be rigid, be like everyone else. So, but ethnic music is just vital to me. And so much of that music is so, I mean, even classical Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, they all borrowed from English. They raised ethnic music to the concert hall. But it's wonderful to watch, because most of it is improvised. I think that's because of my jazz background too, now that you mention it.
And you done a lot of jazz, mixing jazz with chamber music.
Yeah.
So any final questions before we get ready for the film itself? One final question.
Did you go into any Civil War music? Did you look back at that era?
That's a good question too. Now, I did a lot of that for my silent film music, especially The Iron Horse. If you're familiar with that score, that's a silent film with 6,000 extras by John Ford, and there's a lot of saloon music in that. I'm trying to recollect in previous films, silent film music, by the way, composers in the audience, excellent assignments if you can, because it's wall-to-wall music, of course, but those hand-cranked cameras and that asymmetrical rhythm of the film causes you to twerk and tweak melodic lines in different ways with different meters. And it's a kind of a fascinating experience, but I heartily recommend it. But so, my father always said, you have a radio in your head. If I hear music traveling, it stays there, and I can just write Argentine music if I want. It's a gift I have. But silent film has, as a purist, I've written a lot of ethnic music, saloon music for silent films, and that all helped Major Dundee. I mean, again, we draw on all of our experiences, right? Very important. Yeah.
Any final words you want to say to set up the film or your score before we go into the actual?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing out of reverence to, there's some anecdote you may not know, why the original film had this Mitch Miller song on it. I don't know if you know that story.
So not on the story.
Jerry Brusler, the producer, I think born in 1908, Denver, Colorado, went to Swarthmore College. That's the most competitive college in our country. Came to Los Angeles, was a supervisor, production supervisor for MGM, worked on Dr. Kildare, filmed 2 shorts, and won Academy Awards for both of them. So, bright guy. Mitch Miller, born in Rochester, went to Eastman School of Music, majored in oboe like Michael Kamen, composer majored in oboe at Eastman. Probably the most influential pop executive in the 1950s and 60s. Of course, he was the head of the Mitch Miller Choir, and Quincy Jones took over his mantle. 2 very, very competent, erudite men made a decision that I have to say, probably was motivated by greed. Jerry said, Mitch, I've got this film, it's a big budget, it's a peck and paw film, write a song, record it with Mitch, and we'll share the publishing rights. And that's how this it's like Agamemnon going to Achilles and saying, fight the war for Troy from here. It's, we'll pull this Homeric theme as if Major Dundee's come to save the day over an Indian massacre scene. The Apache were warlike, they're not Pawnees, which are benevolent there. This is a very, for its time again, ribald, raw, bloody, violent scene. And they've got this Mitch Miller theme, and God bless these two erudite men because it gave me the break of a lifetime.